Ah, the old mute button. So in the previous video, we talked about making a non-uniform rod with a while loop. And I think that's actually a pretty good way to get started. And it feels pretty intuitive to me. However, I think you're rapidly going to appreciate this other style I'm about to show you, and we're going to pretty much use this one all the time. So we're going to change the while loop to a different kind of loop called a for loop. Let's get into it and see what is different, and I think you'll see why this is nice. So there's a couple of things here that are slightly different. Let's get a screen share going, and let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So, whoops, this is the while loop code, and I'll just show you kind of walk through what the differences are going to be. So just kind of look right in here. This chunk is where things are going to be different. In particular, this is going to change, and I think up in here is going to change, and maybe a few other things. So let's go over to the other code. Where did I put that one? Let's go this one. All right. And so maybe we'll just start here with this one. So again, we've got a rod that's 5 units long. We've got some minimum. We take some maximum. And so that's all well and good. Notice we're going to put the left end of the rod at X minimum. The axis vector should be rod length, not X max. All right. And then we're going to keep going. Now notice this. X. This is a new parameter I have yet to define. If you look up in here, there is no X yet. So I've created this new parameter right here. So I've created a parameter X, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it range from the minimum value of X to the maximum value of X in increments of dx. So what this for loop does is it sets a fixed range of values and an increment size. And now we have to be a little bit careful up here. I believe it uses a strict less than on the maximum value, which may matter in some codes. But so, for example, if our last ball needed to be drawn exactly at 5.00, the value of X max in this case, we would have trouble. All right. So just be aware of that. So now in this case, you can put in a rate statement as well. But notice what the ball's position is now. We no longer have that rod visual guide term. So what this does is it's going to set X to the minimum value, which is essentially rod visual guide's position. If you recall, that was the X position of the rod visual guide. So we no longer need that. It's already built in there. And now it's just going to shift things over by dx over 2. And it's going to go through the loop. And each time when it goes through the loop, notice at the end, I still need this I plus 1 for the list increment. But we would not even need this if we weren't doing this portion of the code. We wouldn't need that I plus equals 1 because I has nothing to do with this increment of the loop. This chunk of loop is changing by dx each time. So the value of X, the first time starts at X minimum, which happens to be 0 right now. Then it would go up to 1 and then 2 and 3 because dx is 1 in this case. So when you run this one, we see this works. And just to show you, we could even set the minimum value at, say, -1. All right. And so let's see what this looks like. And notice this will actually shift the left end of the rod. And again, we don't have to keep changing this line. We don't have to keep changing over here. We don't have to keep changing stuff inside. What if I want to change the number of increments to 7? Right? It should still work. And notice there's a little bit more overlap on these, but we still get the right result. You could check. All right. So that's how you could do this with a for loop. And I highly recommend doing these with for loops just because over time, you will see these get cleaner and cleaner, especially when we need to do two-dimensional structures. We'll usually use nested for loops instead of nested while loops, but both work. And yeah,